How is 3000 ISO cleaner than 2000 ISO? Well, back in 2009, a magical company called Magic Lantern was formed and created awesome firmware for Canon cameras, manipulating their sensor and doing things that Canon did not want you to do. One of those things was dual ISO. It changed the world, and it changed the way cameras were created ever since. Welcome back to the channel. I am Jared Hoyman, and if you like cameras and video and just nerd out things like I'm talking about right now, feel free to subscribe, like, and hang around because we're gonna nerd out on this one. Real quick, I wanna let you know that I'm working on a course right now, specifically with real estate photography business, growing it from the equipment, the techniques, to the marketing, and ultimately how to scale that business. If that is something you're interested in, please leave a comment below. It will be launching sometime in November, and pre-sales will be going on in the next few weeks. So leave a comment below, let me know if you're interested, and I will keep you up to date. Now, in 2010, when I bought the Canon T2i, the Rebel T2i, this was an amazing camera for the price. It was around $700 to $800. It is an APS-C DSLR. It was an awesome camera because you could do HD in 30 frames per second, and I believe 24 frames per second as well. That was cool to get full HD for that price. But what made it really cool was the company called Magic Lantern. In 2009, they were formed and they started doing open source firmware updates on Canon without Canon's permission. Could you brick these cameras? Yeah, possibly. But we didn't care because it was $700 to $800. We were willing to throw that away. But the features they were giving us were more filmic. They were giving us those opportunities and more of those flat logs, and you could do time lapse and things that these cameras were not created to do at the time. But one of the features they introduced was dual ISO. The dual ISO that they gave us was using a low ISO and a high ISO as native and forming that together to give you more of a dynamic range. Now, it was kind of messy, but the concept was there and it was awesome. So fast forward, other companies started doing dual ISO where they had a base ISO of maybe 400 or 800 and another one of 3200. So if you were at one of these ISOs, they would form together and give you more dynamic range. What I couldn't find anywhere was with the Canon R6 Mark II saying that it has dual ISO, but honestly, it clearly does have dual ISO because there's a base ISO when it comes to video and log at 800. But all of a sudden, magically, when you get to 3200, it cleans up way much from the 2500 ISO to the 3200 ISO. And then from 3200 on, it starts to get a little bit dirty. And then to 6400 ISO, it cleans up again. So what does that mean to you and your production? I know Sony has the same option. They have a base ISO and then dual ISO. And it does make sense to up that ISO. Now, back in the day, if I were to up my ISO, it would get messier and dirtier and, just be nasty. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants nasty. I mean, some people want nasty. I don't want nasty. This is something to not be afraid of when shooting high ISO, especially on a full frame camera because your noise is going to be a lot more controlled with that full frame sensor. The R7 might be the next test that I do in a different video, looking to see if that does have dual ISO and where does that benchmark hit. But specifically for the R6 Mark II, it is at 3200. And again, it cleans up again a little bit more at 6400 ISO. So as an architectural photographer who does video walkthroughs with the R6 Mark II, I am not afraid at shooting at 3200 ISO for sure. So if I'm at 1600 or 2000 ISO, I'm gonna just up it all the way to 3200 ISO. And if I'm at about 4000 ISO, I have no problem going to 6400 when I'm in those lower light conditions. It works out really well. So this whole thing floors me because back in the day, we were so conscientious about ISO. We wanted to make sure the ISO or ISO, however you want to say it, was low, so it was a cleaner image. But when it comes to log actually does have to be at a base ISO. For Canon C-Log 3, that base ISO is 800. For some other cameras like Blackmagic and Red, sometimes they're like 1600, some are 3200. But again, it then jumps to 3200 for another base ISO, which is awesome when it comes to these full frame cameras. Grading them in DaVinci Resolve is a dream. Again, you don't want to be below that base ISO, so you don't want to be at that 2000. You want to be at that 3200. And if you're close to 5000, just go up to 6400 because it cleans up a little bit more again. And then 800 is pretty good. But for dynamic range, I have found that the 3200 is a lot more dynamic range than you would get at 800 when it comes to Canon C-Log 3. The other part of this video I want to talk about is Magic Lantern. This company has really been on the back burner for several years. They were the ones that paved the way for this dual ISO. They also did many other things that got Canon to say, okay, we'll introduce this. People are already manipulating our cameras. We might as well just adapt some of these. And I want to give kudos out there to Magic Lantern because it is awesome. It's a community of people programming together. I am not that smart. I don't do programs like that. But they all collaborate and figure it out. What's great about that is because of the friction they created in the industry, they have made these cameras have to compete and get these features in it. And I strongly believe that if it wasn't for Magic Lantern in 2009 forming and the cool things they have been doing, none of these features would be in these cameras at a consumer and prosumer level. Now, unfortunately, over the last few years, they have actually been on the back burner. There hasn't been much progress because Canon and other cameras have locked their systems down quite a bit. Now, if Magic Lantern can manipulate an R6, an R6 II, or an R5 and do some firmware that probably would void your warranty, would it be something you would introduce? Even if it voids your warranty, would you be open to getting that kind of firmware in there if it does something amazing? For example, the R5. If it could do unlimited recording, not overheat, with the firmware that Magic Lantern could do, would you introduce it to it? They'd be tempting. I would do it. That would actually make me want to buy the R5 and not wait for the R5 II, because now I would have unlimited recording. Oh, by the way, Magic Lantern introduced a ton of things that the Canon cameras did not have at the time. That was false color, that was histograms during video. A lot of those things were not introduced until way later. And I want to say that Magic Lantern really did pave the way. So what if Magic Lantern actually gave you a live histogram during recording on the R5 or the R6 or the R6 II? Because right now, if you go to record it, that histogram goes away and you have to just go by what you see. And that was the purpose of Magic Lantern, was to take your camera and make it into a cinema camera. And it did it pretty simple and it was free. I am thankful for companies like Magic Lantern out there and the future company that's going to create something amazing that's going to put more competition into these camera software. You know you're out there. You're going to do it. Magic Lantern, thank you for doing what you did, because you paved the way of creativity in the hands of a consumer. How about you? Have you been playing with dual ISO? Do you notice a big difference? And if not, if you have the R6 Mark II, play with it, because I cannot find it in any of the literature at all, but I do know, based on all the information that I have done and used and tested, there is dual ISO in there, and it works amazing. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, where we will nerd out some more another time about cameras, gear, video, girls, because we talk about girls here, because we're all nerds. I'm married, it's okay. I appreciate you sticking around this long, and if you liked it, you might like these videos as well. They're not bad. They're kind of good.